Oh, we're filming from my living room because the studio is nowhere near being done yet, but that's besides the point. Let's go ahead and start the video. This build has been a trip. While this is the first time doing a build video for a desktop PC, it is not the first time I have built a computer. I started building them in the 90s and was still making my own rigs up until late 2008. When I decided to get back into this hobby, I had no idea how much had changed. Optical drives are now a thing of the past. RGB lighting is. I'd almost never heard of an NVMe M.2 drive, and almost all the standards I did recognize had been updated immensely. So come with me on this trip as I rediscover how to build a computer in this modern world. I bought all of my parts from Micro Center, so the prices I show here reflect the pricing there at that time. During this build, I wanted to keep upgradability in mind in case I missed the mark on something, and to future-proof it as much as you can when it comes to computers. So to start my build, the first thing I did was research what the current CPUs, compatible chipsets, and memory were. I was immediately blown away by the fact that there were more than 4 cores at all, and that it was not just a thing, but the standard for mid-range and high-end builds. I ended up deciding on an AMD 1600 6-core chip for $79, and then later upgrading to the 2700X when those dropped to $199 when the new chip series came out here recently. It seems to still be true, AMD is the better deal. Which, by the way, I love their packaging for it. I don't know why, I just do. Next, I grabbed a B53 motherboard, F, as the per dollar value is great, being under $70 plus a bundle discount of $30 off. That didn't hurt at all. I grabbed 2 sticks of 8 gig 2300 memory for a system total of 1600 gig. They had on clearance for less than $80. Now I needed storage. This is where I found out that hard drives were only really used for long-term storage, and solid state drives were the new standard for everything else. Not only that, but there was a new type of SSD that was perfect for booting. Boot times that used to be the stuff of dreams, NVMe. After doing some more research, I found that for my use case, I would want an NVMe for booting and a few specific programs, a SATA SSD for all my games and a few other programs, and hard drives for everything else. So I got a 256 gigabit NVMe for $44.99 and a 120 gigabit SATA SSD for $17.99 and a 1 terabyte hard drive for $42.99. Leaving space in this case and on the motherboard to expand storage later. I'll most likely add a 4 terabyte hard drive and a 1 terabyte solid state drive, but that's an adventure for later. Well, to run all this, I needed something to power it, as I'm pretty sure the 15-year-old power supply I found in storage probably was not going to cut it. So I grabbed this semi-modular power supply, 80 plus gold rated, that could push 650 watts for $64.99. It's pretty good. I went with this as it was one of the best rated, but not outside of what I could afford that day. One thing that I remember from back in the day was that you do not cheap out on your power supply. If it fails hard enough, it can bork your whole system. It's one of the few parts that can just bork the whole thing if it fails bad enough. Hard drives go out, and you can swap them and just have to back up your downloads and your long-term storage, etc. Blah blah blah. It sucks, but it's one part and some data that if you're doing things right, you've got backed up some. The memory or CPU, yeah, they can crash and maybe once in a while cause some minor other damage, but not the whole system. They rarely bork more than themselves, or in memory's case, sometimes some of the other memory. This power supply also had some spare power in case I wanted to upgrade as well, so that was nice. For GPU, I ended up going with AMD again, as they were just the best bang per buck every time I looked at them. I got a power cooler RedDragon 4 gigabit GDDR5 RX570 for $129, which should be enough to run any game I'm interested in without issue. I do plan to drop in a new 7nm graphics card on my next upgrade cycle. They were sadly not out yet when I built this computer. Now that all the guts were in order, I needed to grab the last few things: cooling solution and a case to put it in. The stock coolers from AMD were actually not that bad, especially being free, so I was able to skip the CPU cooler. I went with the Core G21TG from Thermaltake for $59.99 because it had the fan space I wanted and it looked nice. It was actually a lot less than what I thought I would have to spend on a case that looked this nice. At some point I decided I wanted to do an AMD red themed build. So I grabbed some red LED 120mm and 140mm fans from Thermaltake to slap in there. Price them. The price was $12.99 and $14.99. $12.99 obviously for the 120 and $14.99 for the 140 to complete the build. I grabbed a 144 Hz red colored monitor from Acer for $200. I actually tried to go with a cheaper $100 one. That broke and I had to swap it out, and I just upgraded at that time. Don't cheap out your monitors either. So that's the lesson I learned. To finish out the look, now that all the important stuff was all done and built, I grabbed a Videotek red LED keyboard, a red LED headset and stand from Sades, and a red LED ET mouse, each one less than or around $20, and will have their own video later because I found some of the cheaper stuff was actually pretty neat and relatively sturdy, all things considered. And that's the end of the build walkthrough. Now we're going to actually showing the builds in the other room. And here is the finished product in the heavily under construction studio.